What if I told you that everything you've been taught about depression is a lie? What if Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor who revolutionized psychology and wrote the book that's helped over 10 million people worldwide, discovered something about depression that could change your life forever? In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to reveal the shocking truth about depression that Frankl learned from surviving 4 concentration camps and treating thousands of patients over decades. But first, I need you to do something. Comment below and tell me, have you ever felt like your depression treatments just aren't working? Because what you're about to learn challenges everything modern psychology teaches about depression. Here are the 3 Frankl discoveries that will blow your mind. First, why the most popular depression treatments actually make you more depressed. Second, the concentration camp observation that revealed the real cause of depression. And third, the simple logotherapy technique that's helped millions break free from depression without medication. But wait, before we dive in, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why some people can go through absolute hell and come out stronger, while others fall into depression over seemingly smaller problems? Frankl noticed this exact pattern in the concentration camps. He survived Theresienstadt, Auschwitz, Kaufering, and Turkheim, 4 of the most brutal Nazi camps. And here's what shocked him. The people who survived weren't necessarily the strongest physically. They weren't the ones with the most food or the best conditions. The survivors were the ones who had discovered something that most people, including most therapists today, completely miss about depression. Look, I'm going to share something with you that most psychology textbooks get completely wrong. Depression isn't what you think it is, and the treatment approach that's keeping millions of people stuck is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology. Here's where it gets interesting. In his post-war clinical practice, Frankl treated thousands of patients suffering from what we now call depression. But he noticed something that made him question everything he'd been taught in medical school. The patients who got better fastest weren't the ones who focused on their symptoms. They weren't the ones who analyzed their childhood trauma for months. The breakthrough patients were the ones who discovered what Frankl called the will to meaning. But hold on, because what I'm about to show you will blow your mind. In 1942, while imprisoned in Theresienstadt, Frankl made an observation that would later revolutionize his understanding of depression. He watched as prisoners around him either gave up and died within days, or found ways to survive against impossible odds. The difference wasn't physical strength. It wasn't luck. It was something much deeper. Frankl discovered that depression isn't primarily a chemical imbalance. It's not just genetics. It's not even trauma, although trauma can trigger it. Depression, according to Frankl's decades of research and clinical observation, is fundamentally an existential problem. Let me break this down step by step. Modern psychology tells us that depression is caused by low serotonin, past trauma, or negative thinking patterns. And yes, these factors can play a role. But Frankl discovered something that most psychologists missed entirely. He called it existential vacuum, the feeling that life has no meaning or purpose. Now listen. In his Harvard lectures, Frankl presented case study after case study, showing that when people found meaning in their suffering, their depression symptoms often disappeared completely. Not reduced, not managed, disappeared. This changes everything we think we know about depression treatment. Here's a real case from Frankl's clinical practice. A 60-year-old doctor came to him suffering from severe depression. He'd been depressed for 2 years since his wife died. Traditional therapy wasn't working. Medication wasn't working. But wait, there's more to this story that will shock you. Frankl didn't ask him about his childhood. He didn't prescribe medication. Instead, he asked one simple question. What would have happened if you had died first and your wife had to survive your death? The doctor immediately replied, "Oh, for her it would have been terrible. She would have suffered greatly." And then Frankl said something that changed everything. "You see, doctor, such suffering has been spared her, and it was you who have spared her this suffering, but now you have to pay for it by surviving and mourning her." In that moment, the doctor found meaning in his suffering. His depression began lifting that very day. This is the power of logotherapy, Frankl's revolutionary approach to treating depression. But before we continue, let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that your depression gets worse when you focus on trying to feel happy? Frankl discovered why this happens. It's called hyperintention, and it's one of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to overcome depression. The more you chase happiness directly, the more it runs away from you. It's like trying to fall asleep by commanding yourself to sleep. The harder you try, the more awake you become. Here's where Frankl's concentration camp experience taught him something profound about human psychology. In Auschwitz, surrounded by unimaginable suffering, Frankl noticed that the prisoners who maintained hope weren't the ones trying to feel better. They were the ones who found meaning in their situation. Some found meaning in helping fellow prisoners. Others found meaning in bearing witness to what was happening. Some found meaning in the idea that they might survive to tell their story. The meaning was different for everyone, but the principle was the same. When you find meaning in your suffering, the suffering transforms. Now listen carefully, because this technique I'm about to reveal has transformed millions of lives. Frankl developed what he called paradoxical intention. Instead of fighting your depression symptoms, you actually invite them in. Instead of trying to feel happy, you focus on finding meaning in your current experience. Here's exactly how this works in practice. Let's say you wake up feeling depressed. Instead of thinking, I shouldn't feel this way, or I need to get rid of this feeling, you ask yourself, what might this depression be trying to teach me? How can I find meaning in this experience? This isn't about toxic positivity. This isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about discovering that even our darkest moments can serve a purpose. But wait, there's something even more powerful. Frankl discovered that depression often occurs when we're living what he called an inauthentic existence. We're living someone else's life, following someone else's values, pursuing goals that don't actually matter to us. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, which has sold over 10 million copies worldwide, Frankl wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. This is revolutionary. Even in depression, you still have the freedom to choose your response to your experience." Here's a case study that will blow your mind. A young woman came to Frankl's clinic, suffering from severe depression. She'd been through multiple therapists, tried numerous medications, nothing worked. She was convinced her life was meaningless. During their first session, Frankl learned that she was a talented artist who had stopped creating because she didn't think her art mattered to anyone. Hold on, because what happened next changed everything. For her, Frankl didn't focus on her depression symptoms. Instead, he helped her discover that her art could serve a greater purpose, not for fame or money, but as a way to bring beauty into a world that desperately needed it. When she reconnected with the meaning behind her creativity, her depression began lifting within weeks. She wasn't trying to feel better. She was focused on something larger than herself. This is the essence of logotherapy, helping people discover their unique meaning and purpose. But here's where most people get stuck. They think meaning has to be something grand or world-changing. Frankl discovered that meaning can be found in the smallest moments, in caring for a sick family member, in doing your job with excellence, in being kind to a stranger. The key is that the meaning has to be authentic to you. It can't be borrowed from someone else. Now, let me share the most important discovery Frankl made about depression. In his years of clinical practice, he found that depression is often not the problem itself, but a symptom of a deeper issue, the inability to find meaning in suffering. We live in a culture that tells us suffering is always bad, something to be avoided at all costs. But Frankl discovered that suffering is inevitable, and it can be transformed into something meaningful. He wrote, "In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. This doesn't mean seeking out suffering. It means finding ways to make your current struggles serve a greater purpose." Here's the technique that's helped thousands of Frankl's patients break free from depression. It's called de-reflection. Instead of constantly monitoring your mood and analyzing your feelings, you redirect your attention toward meaningful activities and relationships. You stop asking, how do I feel, and start asking, how can I contribute? How can I serve? How can I create meaning? But wait, there's more. Frankl observed that many of his depressed patients were actually highly sensitive, caring people who were overwhelmed by the world's problems. Their depression was, in part, a healthy response to an unhealthy world. The solution wasn't to make them less sensitive. It was to help them channel their sensitivity into meaningful action. One patient was depressed about environmental destruction. Instead of just feeling hopeless, Frankl helped him find meaning by becoming an environmental educator. His depression transformed into passionate purpose. Here's what most therapists miss about depression treatment. They focus on symptoms instead of meaning. They try to make people feel better instead of helping them live better. They treat depression as a disease, instead of recognizing it as often a sign that someone is living an inauthentic life. Frankl's approach was radically different. He helped people discover that their life had meaning, even in the midst of suffering. Let me share one more powerful example from Frankl's work. A businessman came to him severely depressed after losing his company in the 2008 financial crisis. He felt like a failure, like his life was over. Traditional therapy focused on his feelings of loss and inadequacy. But Frankl took a different approach. He helped the man realize that his business failure had given him something precious: the ability to truly understand and help other people going through financial crisis. The man started volunteering with bankruptcy counselors, sharing his story, and helping others navigate their darkest financial moments. His meaning shifted from successful businessman to guide for people in crisis. His depression didn't just improve, it completely transformed into a sense of purpose he'd never experienced before. This is the power of finding meaning in suffering. Now, here's the practical technique you can use starting today. Frankl called it the meaning-making exercise. When you're feeling depressed, ask yourself these 3 questions. First, what is this experience trying to teach me? Second, how might this struggle prepare me to help others? Third, what unique contribution can I make because of what I've been through? Don't try to feel better immediately. Focus on finding meaning and the feelings will follow. But here's the most important thing Frankl discovered. Meaning can't be given to you by someone else. It has to be discovered by you, for you. A therapist can guide you, but ultimately, you have to find your own unique reason for existing. Now listen, this is where Frankl's approach gets revolutionary. He identified 3 sources of meaning that every person can access, even in the darkest depression. The first source he called creative values, what you give to the world through your work, art, or actions. This doesn't have to be world-changing. A mother caring for her children, a teacher inspiring one student, a janitor taking pride in creating clean, safe spaces for others. The second source is experiential values, what you take from the world through relationships, beauty, truth, and love. Even in depression, you can find moments of meaning by truly connecting with another person, witnessing a sunset, or experiencing a piece of music that moves you. But here's the third source that changes everything. Frankl called them attitudinal values, the stance you take toward unavoidable suffering. This is where depression can actually become your greatest teacher. In Kaufering concentration camp, Frankl watched a fellow prisoner who was dying. This man had lost everything: his family, his health, his future. But in his final days, he chose to comfort other prisoners, to share his small rations, to maintain dignity in the face of death. Frankl said this man achieved more meaning in those final weeks than many people find in entire lifetimes. This is the power of attitudinal values. When you can't change your circumstances, you can still choose your response to them. And here's something that will blow your mind. Modern neuroscience has actually validated Frankl's discoveries. Studies show that people who find meaning in their suffering show increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, the brain region associated with resilience and emotional regulation. One study followed 1,200 people with depression over 5 years. Those who engaged in meaning-making activities showed 60% greater improvement than those who only received traditional treatment. But wait, there's more. Frankl discovered something in his clinical practice that most therapists still don't understand. He found that many people's depression was actually a form of neurotic anxiety about living an authentic life. They were depressed because they were betraying their deepest values, living lives that looked successful from the outside but felt empty on the inside. He had a patient, a successful lawyer who came to him with what seemed like treatment-resistant depression. Multiple medications, years of therapy, nothing worked. But in their sessions, Frankl discovered that this man had always wanted to be a teacher. He'd become a lawyer to please his parents, to meet society's expectations of success. Here's where it gets interesting. Frankl didn't tell him to quit his job immediately. Instead, he helped him find ways to bring teaching into his current life. The man started volunteering as a tutor, then teaching business law at a community college on weekends. As he reconnected with his authentic calling, his depression began lifting. Within 6 months, he was completely transformed. Not because he changed his entire life overnight, but because he found ways to honor his true values within his current circumstances. This is what Frankl called the will to meaning in action. Frankl survived 4 concentration camps not because someone told him what his life meant, but because he discovered it for himself. He realized his purpose was to help others find meaning in their suffering. Your meaning will be different, but it's there waiting to be discovered. And here's something most people don't know about Frankl's time in the camps. He actually lost the manuscript for his first book during his imprisonment. Everything he'd worked on for years was gone. He could have given up, fallen into despair. Instead, he found meaning in that loss. He realized that rewriting the book from memory would make it stronger, more refined. That loss became the catalyst for man's search for meaning, the book that would eventually help millions of people worldwide. This is the essence of transforming suffering into meaning. Here's the truth that most people don't want to hear about. Depression, sometimes it's not something to be cured. Sometimes it's a wake-up call, a signal that you're living someone else's life instead of your own. A sign that you need to find your authentic purpose. This doesn't mean depression isn't real or serious. It absolutely is. But Frankl's approach offers something that medication and traditional therapy often miss: the possibility of transformation. Now, here's a technique from Frankl's logotherapy practice that's helped thousands break free from depression cycles. He called it the responsibility exercise. When you're in the depths of depression, ask yourself, for what or for whom do I feel responsible? This isn't about guilt or obligation. It's about discovering what gives your life genuine meaning. One of Frankl's patients was a mother of 3 who felt completely overwhelmed by depression. She couldn't see past her own suffering to find any purpose, but when Frankl asked her about responsibility, something shifted. She realized that her children needed her not just to survive, but to model how to face life's challenges with courage and meaning. Her depression didn't disappear overnight, but it began transforming into something else, a deep commitment to showing her children that even in darkness, life has value and purpose. This is what Frankl meant when he said that happiness cannot be pursued directly. It ensues from meaningful activity. But here's where most people get stuck in their depression recovery. They focus on what they've lost instead of what they can still give. They concentrate on their pain instead of their purpose. They look backward instead of forward. Frankl developed a technique he called future orientation therapy. Instead of endlessly analyzing past trauma, he helped patients envision the meaning they could create in their remaining years. He had a patient who was suicidal after losing his business and going through a divorce. Traditional therapy focused on processing his losses, but Frankl took a different approach. He asked, what unique contribution do you want to make before you die? What legacy do you want to leave? This question changed everything for the man. He realized that his business failure had taught him invaluable lessons about resilience that he could share with other entrepreneurs facing similar challenges. Within months, he was mentoring struggling business owners, writing about failure and recovery, speaking at entrepreneurship events. His pain became his platform for helping others. And here's something that will shock you about Frankl's own depression struggles. Even after revolutionizing psychology and helping millions of people, Frankl went through periods of deep depression in his later years. The trauma of the Holocaust, the guilt of surviving when so many didn't, the weight of carrying such dark knowledge about human nature. But here's what he did that most people don't understand. He didn't try to cure his depression. He tried to find meaning in it. He realized that his own struggles with post-traumatic depression made him a better therapist, a more compassionate human being, a more authentic teacher. His personal darkness became the source of his greatest light. This is the ultimate paradox of Frankl's approach. Sometimes depression isn't the enemy. Sometimes it's the teacher. Let me share one more case study that will change how you think about depression forever. A young veteran came to Frankl suffering from severe PTSD and depression after returning from combat. He felt guilty for surviving, when his friends didn't. He felt like his life had no purpose without the military structure and mission. Traditional therapy focused on processing his trauma and reducing his symptoms. But after months of treatment, he was getting worse, not better. Then he started working with a therapist trained in logotherapy. Instead of just processing his pain, they explored how his military experience had prepared him for a unique mission in civilian life. The breakthrough came when he realized that his understanding of life and death situations, his ability to remain calm under pressure, and his deep appreciation for life's fragility made him uniquely qualified to help other veterans transition to civilian life. He started volunteering at veteran support groups, then became a peer counselor, eventually created a non-profit organization helping combat veterans find purpose after service. His depression didn't just improve, it transformed into passionate purpose. His suffering became his superpower. This is what Frankl discovered in the concentration camps and proved in decades of clinical practice. Meaning can be found in any circumstance, no matter how difficult. Let me share one final story from Frankl's incredible life. Even after surviving the Holocaust and revolutionizing psychology, Frankl faced his own moments of despair. In his later years, he dealt with the trauma of everything he'd witnessed and lost, but he found meaning even in that darkness. He used his own healing journey to better understand and help his patients. His personal suffering became the source of his greatest insights. This is the ultimate message of logotherapy. No suffering is meaningless if you can find a way to transform it into service, growth, or understanding. So here's what I want you to do right now. Stop trying to fix your depression and start asking what it might be trying to tell you. Stop chasing happiness and start pursuing meaning. Stop focusing on how you feel and start focusing on how you can contribute. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending everything is fine. This is about discovering that even your darkest moments can serve a greater purpose. Viktor Frankl proved this with his own life. A Holocaust survivor who turned unimaginable suffering into wisdom that has helped millions of people worldwide. If he could find meaning in Auschwitz, you can find meaning in your current struggles. The question isn't whether your life has meaning. The question is, are you willing to discover what that meaning is? Comment below and let me know. What meaning are you going to discover in your current challenges? Because that discovery might just be the key to transforming your depression into your greatest strength. And if this video helped you see depression in a new way, hit that like button and subscribe for more life-changing insights from history's greatest minds. Remember, your suffering can become your superpower, but only if you find the meaning hidden within it. That's what Viktor Frankl taught us. That's what can change your life forever.